Southern Cherkasy region is characterized not just by interesting places of nature, not only beautiful landscapes, but also by mystical places. It is the history of our people and very curious historical sites. Southern Cherkasy region must be studied at all levels. That is a prototype of the clay jug used in this area. Why the jug? Since there are lots of healing springs people have been using for centuries. Sure, there are little of springs left now, but they still preserved healing properties. It was in these clay jugs that water from those springs has been stored. The pictorial art, or the painting applied to the clay jug, is considered a symbol of krai. This painting is typical for that particular region. There is also one mystical well called consecrated. A memory of enchanter Cossacks is very significant in this place. By the way, it was here that Ukrainian army defeated the Poles. They appeared before the Poles unexpectedly, and due to this sudden appearance under the pressure, they defeated the Polish army, evidenced by memorial signs and historical documents. They might probably have used the power of area to do this. This well is mystically associated with this victory, and thus the pavilions installed there, as well as memorial signs and chairs to sit on and remember the ancestors, meditate, apply to higher forces of any religion a person professes. That mystical well is known in many countries worldwide. By the way, people come from abroad to sit near that well. You may find yourselves on a stone plateau between the villages of Chorna Kamenka and Yurpil in Cherkasy region. That is an unusual stone plateau, since there are irregular stones discovered by local residents, as well as previous geological studies. Those stones are increased in size yearly by about 10 to 15%. They are constantly moving. They may bore into the ground and get out of there. They may also move one against another. While this phenomenon is being studied, the matter is that in the nearest villages of Chorna Kamenka and Yurpil, people find small stones in their gardens 3 times a year, both when they harvest, when they sow the crop, when they clean and weed. 3 times a year, they find that small stones appear in the gardens. Then they are transported, poured out on the bank of the Girsky River. From here, those stones start to grow little by 10 to 15% a year. Not as fast as Romanian trovants, but they still grow and can move. It is on this very stone plateau that this phenomenon occurs. Butsky Canyon is well known all over Ukraine. It is currently a very beautiful place. The Girsky River passes through granites. That is the most beautiful place in southern Cherkasy region. Butsky Canyon is divided into three parts. It is known that in the ancient Vedic religion, the first three energies that come from the Absolute, the deity, they are just like the Trinity, as in Christianity. In most religions, the first manifestation of the Absolute is the Trinity. These energies are called Prava, Yava and Nava. Prava grants a person the power to create and live, i.e. to be connected with the highest forces themselves. Java grants clarity of mind and the manifestation of talents, abilities and willpower, i.e. the stuff called spiritual potential. But the energy of Nava, also called Tuin, is the energy that goes along the bottom of the canyon over the Girski River. Therefore, people first walk along the right bank of the canyon, then along the left, and then come and touch the water of the Girski River. Ledjedzine is an ancient Trypillian place found by archaeologists. According to scientists who made excavations, the area of the Trypillian city was more than 700 hectares, i.e. there was a real Trypillian metropolis, a very huge city. One couldn't imagine that ancient cultures, in particular Trypillian one, could have metropolises, but they had a serious one. In Ledjedzine, the archaeologists have excavated not just that place. They found how the buildings of the Trypillians were built. So they restored some structures, religious buildings, structures the Trypillians have been living in. Namely, several structures have been restored and one may observe them now. The history of Trypillian dwellings dates back more than 2000 years, as well as the archaeological culture itself. They were different. They were both half mud huts and single-storied houses. Many researchers prove that there were also two-story dwellings. They have been used wood, clay, chaff, and probably reeds as material. One may find huge settlements on the diagram. Those are huge, giant mega-settlements located on the territory of the southern Cherkasy region. According to researchers, the number is currently made up of several thousand buildings, up to 3,000 houses for one settlement. For the Neolithic era, those were the largest settlements in the world, which existed at the beginning of the 4th millennium BC. It is difficult to consider any standard, but the houses were basically about 4 to 5 meters wide and from 10 to 20 meters long. They were often two-chamber, had an entrance hall and one large room. The room traditionally had a stove. The Tomashivska local group for such large settlements, as in the Uman region, had an altar, i.e. a place where people slept, and where grain and ceramic dishes have been stored. The workplace was located opposite the stove, where grain was ground using a mill and stone. Everything was like a studio room, where they had everything required for life at that time. One may speak of Trypillian dwellings mainly due to three following sources, namely archaeological excavations that partially prove the concept of their houses, fortunately. They left us at least something, namely models of Trypillian buildings, as well as small ceramic houses. We have carried out a number of necessary experiments for those purposes. One has currently 2 points of view on such two-storied buildings. Most researchers prove that these were two-storied, two-level buildings, which were burned down when they periodically migrated from place to place by exhausting resources around. Another group assumes that they were scorched, i.e., these houses have been formed by means of fire. That's why we have carried out a number of experiments, but, unfortunately, we have not yet put a kibosh on this scientific decision. But in my opinion, these were two-level buildings not formed, but ruined by means of fire. The matter is currently being studied. Archaeologists are currently studying the remains of burnt houses in the form of scorched clay and backcoating. In this museum, one may find restored magical tools of the Tropilians, which in turn gave rise to an ancient Slavic magic. Let's take the goddess of fertility, for instance. The rough figureness of the goddess of fertility, with 9 balls encrusted. What did the ancient Tropilians do? They asked questions, then shook this goddess in their hands, and when they stopped doing that, she started vibrating first, and then they heard a voice answering. Aid gave not mystical answers, but with her voice she answered questions, asked for what should be done, what kind of natural disaster might occur, and what events would happen. We perfectly know of such clay gods who could respond with their voice to a person's request. They may be found in many religions of the Middle East, and they are called teraphims. They are also mentioned in both Islamic and biblical sources. These teraphims are completely similar to seraphims. The protective spirits were called simargls, depicted as winged dogs. We may find that there are plenty of these simargls. It also refers to rituals of how to summon them to God. These simargls found of themselves among the Tropilians. But in the ancient Slavic Vedic tradition, which came following the Tropilians, that was a deity, no longer some numerously protective spirits, but actually a deity. The original source of the word simargl and its protective function comes from Tropilia. But for an old Slavic god called simargl, the protective function simply prolonged. The Tropilian culture is unique in terms of staying on the edge, namely on the edge of the primitive communal system and civilization. It hasn't been the only one who hit this rock by reaching the modern world. It is also a powerful agricultural area. There is an agricultural area that has established agriculture as a traditional economy on our hands. It started about 7,000 years ago and kept on staying on our hands. Sometimes an emphasis changed, but agriculture has been also the basis of people's lives on our territory. Tropilia is unique in having about 20 extraordinary mega-settlements among the large number of Tropilian settlements. Those are the largest settlements in the world. For me, the uniqueness of Tropilia is the presence of those huge mega-settlements located on the territory of the historical Uman region. Modern Zvenigorod, Uman, Novoarkhangelsk region in Kirograd Oblast are just 5 or 10 times larger in area. These are large on the territory of other developed cultures of the Balkans, Asia Minor, in the Middle East, Northeast Africa, where Egypt will then be located. I.e., on this very territory, Tripelia created a mega-settlement. It's actually kind of hard to tell that these were built cities, since the matter requires studies and evidence is proved. Probably one day this opinion will be confirmed, but we're currently talking about mega-settlements, giant settlements of huge areas. The village of Talanki, for instance, had 450 hectares, about 3,000 houses, and more than 10,000 people. It existed in the 38th and 37th centuries BC, i.e. about 1,000 years before the construction of the first pyramids of Djoser in Egypt, and 700 and 800 years before the first cities appeared in Mesopotamia. It is a very interesting fact, since this historical phenomenon requires studies and popularization. Sofiivka Park. It is known that Count Potocki was a member of many mystical orders, and he built Sofiivka as one of the temples. The temple was used to carry out magical rituals by secret orders, in particular such as Masons, Rosicrucians, Templars, etc. Why did he build Sofia exactly there? Since there were the remains of an ancient Slavic temple, and the last is located north of Sofiivka. Archaeologists have found it and are currently excavating. I.e. Potocki thought that if the ancient priests of this people, namely the Magi, build a temple here, then there is a place of power, and thus one should build another new temple or temple park of Sofiivka near that place of power already determined by priests in ancient times. Many people find Sofiivka a very beautiful park with some kind of lake, some birds swimming there, and beautiful trees, flowers. But everyone has already forgotten what it actually is. Count Potocki was a member of many secret orders and masonry. In particular, he made Sofiivka a Masonic park temple. Who are actually those Masons? The matter is that Masons said that they came from ancient Egypt, and they knew the secrets of the pyramid builders. Well, if one considers the history of Europe, one may find a very strange thing, that all the churches and cathedrals have not been ruined till nowadays. Earthquakes, wars, floods, strong winds, fires, all of this can't ruin them. They stand where they are for centuries. Bridges and royal palaces that have been standing the ground for centuries never ruined. Those were masons who built them. The exact word mason means the one who builds out of stone. They have actually known the secret of some Egyptian pyramid builders, since one may find those techniques used in construction. It is unknown whether modern masons preserve this knowledge or not, but in those Middle Ages they actually could, and thus enjoyed great authority. The matter is that the Masonic lodges of that time include emperors, kings from all Europe, counts, i.e. people who have been actually ruling the world and decided its fate. Potocki have actually built Sofiivka to allow those people gather for meeting. How did he start building Sofiivka? The heart of Sofiivka is the so-called Grotto of Diana, but it is actually an ancient Egyptian temple. It is unknown how a pyramid was carved in super hard granite rocks, i.e. a pyramid was not built, as in Egypt, but it was carved into the rock, and its inner surface was covered with an alloy containing lots of silver. That is an exact Egyptian pyramid covered with silver. There is a hole at the bottom of that pyramid with the spring water flowing therefrom. That very pyramid was used for the initiation of Masons or other orders. Emperors and imperial families came to Potocki from all over Europe, and there they performed initiation rituals. Royal families and their relatives initiated their relatives into Masons. It was in that very place that 33 initiations have been allowed per year. 33 was generally a number of theirs. Also, 33 is a number of vertebrae in the human spine. Each initiation is considered an inclusion of a single vertebra as an energy center. 33 initiations mean that 33 vertebrae are joined, and the spine becomes a pillar connecting heaven and earth, namely human with God. That's why they were striving for. The first initiation in the cave meant a challenge to the four elements, namely earth, fire, air, and water. While the four elements have been summoned and appeared in the pyramid, they made the first initiation, i.e. the first stage of the initiation. There are currently none of those great emperors and kings. All empires have been ruined in the 20th century, but in the past, that place had a very strong fame. The matter is that till nowadays all the water supply to Oman, all those sources are thrown into the pyramid, and then it was proved to the water supply. Thus, visitors are not allowed to enter the grotto of Diana, so that to avoid water pollution, since it is drinkable and consumed by almost all of human people. Sofiivka is a product of the times. It was built at the end of the 18th century. As one highlights the most important thing, then this is for sure the semantics of the epoch. That is the hidden and obscure content of each object, and it matters. Here we are standing near the sanctum, namely the grotto called Mirror of Diana. Diana is the goddess of chastity and mystery, and thus the grotto is mysterious as well. The grotto has several semantic levels. The first one is mythological. Another one, surely, is Masonic, mysterious. Since Count Potocki was an uncrowned king of right bank Ukraine and the richest man in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, he was also the Grand Master of the Greater East. This Masonic lodge is the highest one in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Previously, he had already visited the three white eagles and the Isis shrine. These were the Masonic lodges he had also organized. This grotto was built here from the very beginning. It was the first hydraulic structure located in the park whose basic mission and function was to bring an uninitiated layman there and make him the mason. Since the count was the highest rank of initiation of masons, he brought here brethren in the lodge, namely a layman, where brethren in the lodge took vows. That was here where a mysterious initiation to masons took place. He was initiated here, since the whole park is a paradise for the chosen ones. These rituals has literally continued everywhere, i.e. they sailed in the underworld. All brethren were sitting down in the boats in complete darkness, where no one could see you underground. It was time for one to enter the grotto, then close the door behind, where the secret covers everything that would happen. That's how Count Potocki and his brethren in the lodge performed all those missions in this paradise. New Sofiivka is a Shinto-style park. The matter is that in Japan, the religion they profess is called Shintoism, coming from the word Shinto. The word Shinto may be translated into our language as sacred, i.e. everything that is sacred, the temple of deity and the forces of nature. All of those mean Shinto. They believe that human interacts with God and can only understand him while in beautiful places of nature, namely in gardens. Another interesting religion, which is currently known worldwide as the Baha'i, believes the same. They also believe that the soul may communicate with God in the garden. For that very purpose, this must be created. The Shintoists believe the same. Communication between human and gods happens in the garden. Thus, they either create special gardens for this purpose or choose beautiful places of nature. These were Shinto experts who created such a park opposite Sofiivka, also called New Sofiivka. There are gates to the underworld, like illuminated fountains, trees made of unusual stones, bridges over lakes, stone structures, a stone dragon, as well as a winged horse running above the water. These are all Shinto paintings that must give a person an impetus to connect the soul with something divine and beautiful. So the person began to develop and grow. I couldn't even imagine that we have Shinto Park here. But I had no doubt that it could be, since the Japanese themselves did not hide the fact that they borrowed part of their ancient religion from India, where there are lots of Vedic roots between India and Japan, and in turn between the ancient Slavs and India. Thus, what had Vedic roots inside had returned to the place where the Vedic religion has been once the most significant one. It is not surprising, since it was a law of space. That's how it should be. The park is very beautiful. Uman has generally decided to create 5 parks, 2 of them being religious. Pototsky Park and New Sofiivka, like others, were either natural or entertaining. For instance, Dinosaur Park was intended for small children, so that they could play with large dinosaur models. There would be 5 parks in Uman while forming a single system, so that one could come here and find all 5 parks as a single complex.